Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Everyday Strong with Dr. Michael G. Daniels. This is your host, C.B. Baker. We are coming out of entering phase one of the COVID coronavirus reopening phase. I feel good about the coming weeks and getting back into church and seeing people and seeing how worshiping social distancing will happen. Mm-hmm. Now, moving on to our topic, which with social distancing, you shouldn't have too much more worried about, is the Me Too movement. Yeah. And, we wanted to have a good discussion on how things are going with Me Too movement. Has it gone too far? Is it just right? Or is it, for some people, might think it's not enough? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to talk about today, Dr. Daniels. So what's your thoughts?
Well, I think, one of the things that comes to my mind is the issue with Vice President Biden. One of the things that keeps being brought up, and I'm sad that it probably will end up being a debate as we move forward in the election process, is a young, she's no longer a young woman, but a woman came up and said that Vice President Biden, back when he was a senator, accosted her, so sexually harassed her. She said sexually assaulted her. And so the question that's come up by a lot of people is, well, should we believe her? He denies it categorically. Should we believe him? And so you have the Me Too movement that's saying anytime a woman alleges that she has been accosted, sexual harassment, sexual assault, what have you, that she should just be believed, and that the man should automatically be thought to be a liar if he denies it. I think that we've gotten to a point where we have overstepped our boundaries. Granted, in the past, I think people were hesitant to believe the woman. I look at the Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill situation,
right,
where the questions they asked her were leading one to believe that most of the people were just saying they thought she was just out and out lying. Now, whether she was or not, we don't know. Of course, Clarence Thomas categorically said she was lying. And we don't know. But what I do think is now we've gotten to a place where if a woman accuses you, it's automatically presumed that she is not lying and the man is lying. And I think that we have to kind of step back a little bit and see, well, where do we actually place both individuals? If we go by the letter of the law, everybody is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Right.
So we just should not just assume that the man is guilty. And that's what I'm afraid of, is that there are going to be a lot of people that's going to presume that Biden is guilty, regardless of what any evidence says or lack of evidence says.
Yeah, that is the major issue with that. And also another issue is the lack of follow-up with a lot of the Me Too situations. Mm-hmm. You hear about it, but then you don't hear the follow-up, like with Russell Simmons. Mm-hmm. He's like, you get accused, but then he, resigned, stepped off the board for, I think it was Def Jam. Mm-hmm. But you didn't hear anything else. You're like, you don't hear anything else. Now, unfortunately or fortunately for Biden, he's running for president. So we're going to keep hearing about it until the most likely to be a resolution.
Well, whether or not if he is elected president,
right,
we probably won't hear it anymore.
Right.
I take that back. Even if he's not elected president, we won't hear it anymore.
Right. It will just fade off and fade to black, so to speak.
Right. And we won't know if he's did it or he hasn't done it. But the allegation is one that, to me, raises some questions. As I say, in most cases now, it is believe the person irrespective. I just think that that's taking it a little bit too far.
Yeah.
Even if you think about our lieutenant governor as another example, that was accused by this young woman of sexually assaulting her. Now, I don't necessarily want to go through all of the details of it because it was graphic testimony. It actually was given on TV. But her testimony to me seems somewhat suspect. I'm not saying that she lied. What I'm saying is that, and maybe I should just say it so people will know what I'm talking about, here is she was interviewed on TV, and the young woman said that her and the lieutenant governor back doing a campaign. This was before he was a lieutenant governor. That they had a consensual date, right? And that she goes to his room consensually,
right?
And that they are, caressing and they are kissing consensually. And she says that then they engage in oral, oral representation of intimacy, and that she wanted to say stop but couldn't, and so he did not stop, and that she classified as sexual assault. I don't understand how it can be sexual assault if you want to say stop but you couldn't or didn't.
Right.
Her reasoning for saying, and I'm not saying this to be jokingly, but this is what it came across. Her reasoning for not being able to say stop was her mouth was full.
Right.
Well, my thing would be you couldn't figure out that you wanted not to be a part of this up until that point. You didn't know, that to me raises some questions.
Right.
And if that's the case, why all of a sudden now was that an issue? And to me, it's the same thing I look at with Joe Biden, is that this is something that happened years and years ago. Why didn't this come up when he was the vice president?
Right.
Why all of a sudden now is this such a huge issue? That to me, it begs the question is, why are you bringing it up?
Yeah, it's the why factor is really what clouds everything up. And it's also the reason why I think the Me Too movement doesn't get as far as it should as a movement, because you got situations like this that's coming up where it's years later, and then you're like, well, why? Then the question comes up, then why did it take you so long? Then you got to go through the whole discussion process of how the person felt. Then you got the mental health aspect of it. So then you go off into the weeds to the point that now it's like, okay, now when somebody, if it happens, you need to say something relatively fast, in my opinion.
I agree. And I think, a lot of women will say that they don't say something because they have a fear of retribution, or at that time, there's an uncomfortable addressing issue. And I get that, I'm sure we all have been in situations where we felt uneasy and just kind of said, I'll let it go, but sometimes what I've noticed is that they'll ask the question, well, did you say anything at that time?
Right.
And the person will say, well, yeah, I told my sister, or I told my best friend, or I told my mother. But if it didn't progress then the question is, why would it progress? Why would 30 years later, your recollection of what happened change so much? If initially when it happens, it was just the person said something that you thought was out of character, and then as time progressed, it's now a sexual assault. How do you get from he said something to a sexual assault? And what is the likelihood of the assault happening in a public place? Because she said this happened in a very public place. So what's the likelihood of a senator sexually assaulting you in a place that's heavily traveled?
Yeah.
There's all that kind of stuff going on. And if it has been litigated, and that's the other thing that I say, if it has been litigated, let's just say for the sake of argument that it really happened. If it was litigated and it's over with 30 years ago, why are you bringing it up now?
Right.
What's the valid point of bringing it up now? If a person does a crime and they pay the price for the crime, why do we try to make them suffer forever?
Right.
And that's another thing. To me, it just seems like that we want to just totally destroy people as opposed to saying we want to correct the behavior.
Yeah, you're right. It's sometimes it feels like a witch hunt, and and hidden agendas behind it, behind all of it, which I go back to saying, which is really what's killing the actual Me Too movement, is people doing it with alternative motives behind it. And then when it was really hot and heavy with the Me Too movement, it got to the point where, I wouldn't even like hug a female at work. I had already in my job set up parameters where if I met with a female employee, I would have the door would be open. I would never, have the door closed. The door would be open. And then now it's to the point now where if I meet with a female employee, I got a human resources is in the room. Sure. As being the CEO and the owner of the business, I'm always at protection, of myself.
And I mean, to me, it's sad.
Right.
I think it's sad. I don't want any of our female listeners to think that, we're trying to bash women, or that we're saying that women are liars, because that's not what I'm saying. I know that's not what you're saying. But I think it's sad when we get to the point where people can't be human. And I think that's where we're getting to. It's where you can't be human. When I was early on in my career with the federal government, I was a sexual harassment counselor. And at that time, sexual harassment was defined as unsolicited and unwanted sexual advancements of any kind. Now, that also extended to if I was in a private office, if I had a picture of, let's say, cheerleaders on my door or something inside the office, if one of my employees came in and said, that picture makes me feel uncomfortable, I had to take it down because that was ruled as sexual harassment. Now, to me, that made no sense, because if I go in your office and you have a picture of, let's say, your father-in-law, I can't tell you that picture makes me uncomfortable and you take it down.
Right.
But it both make me uncomfortable. So, I mean, to me, because it's a private, although I shouldn't say a private office, but it's a private office. It's a public entity, but it's a private office. I think we're taking it too far. How can a picture of a cheerleader make you uncomfortable when cheerleaders are in the public forum?
Right.
They're at football games, they're at basketball games.
It's like a Super Bowl where they was uncomfortable because of what J-Lo had did, on stage and stuff. It's like
it's a public forum, right? And so that, to me, it kind of like you're taking it a little bit too far. The other thing is this. Let's say, it's a single woman that works in your employment, and there's a single man. How does the man know ahead of time that if he asks the lady out on a date, she won't like the idea?
Yeah. There's no way of knowing.
No way of knowing it.
Right.
But if he asks her out on a date, she can file a charge for sexual harassment.
Right.
Because she can say that I didn't want it and I didn't solicit it, and therefore he harassed me. Now, there are many office romances that start, blossom, and people actually get married in office romances. But in today's climate, you couldn't even ask, you couldn't even just innocently say to another female, hey, listen, after work today, rather than us going home, let's just go to First Fridays, and have a drink, eat some hors d'oeuvres, whatever, just to relax, and then we'll go home. Because even though it's totally innocent, even though you would have no sexual thoughts about the person, they could say that's sexual harassment.
Right.
Which to me is carrying things a little bit too far, because I don't know it is unwanted until you tell me it's unwanted.
Right.
Now, if you tell me and I keep doing it, now I think we got a problem. But, at some point we have to allow people to be human, and without fear that everything I say or do is going to bring us down, or else we just be too segregated in our work environments and in life in general.
Yeah, I can tell you from a business owner that one of the things that I really dread is when somebody walks in my office and says, such and such, such asked me out, and I feel uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Right then I already know, and say, okay, now we got to maneuver around some stuff. How do you not get sued? How does, how you keep the drama down? Like, then you got to do a formal investigation of everything. Then you get, you're getting statements from everybody. It's like literally, and then when you come to find out, half the time it was a 2-minute conversation. Like what you said, somebody asked the person out, they ain't want to, but then they're like, well, I don't want the situation to go sideways, or so I'm gonna go report this. Mm-hmm. And then thinking they're not getting the person in trouble, but when you do that,
well, and it's livelihood. I mean, when we say trouble, it's livelihood. I would say every manager, but I think most managers that manage a reasonable amount of people have had themselves in a situation where someone has come to them and said, I need to report this because of, sexual harassment, sexual intimidation, what have you.
Right.
Now, the thing is this: the person that in some organization, the organization that I work for, it was a zero tolerance. And even where I'm at now, of course, I have a zero tolerance, and I did it to protect the organization.
Right.
Zero tolerance, which meant if someone accused you, I had no choice but to get rid of you. Now that's, in my way of thinking, is not something I wanted to do.
Right, right.
But I had no choice in the matter because it was a zero tolerance.
Right.
I had to presume that the woman did it because something really happens. But how do I know whether or not she just doesn't like that person, is upset with that person for some reason,
right,
and is doing this to get back at them?
Mm-hmm.
How do I know she doesn't want their job?
Yeah.
And is hoping that they will get removed so that she can get their job.
Right.
And I got to tell you, in some cases, that's what was really in my mind, that, I kind of know this guy, he's been working for me for a long time. It doesn't fit his method, of operation. So why would he all of a sudden, approach you that way? But I have no choice, and that's the thing that to me becomes frightening, because you play with people's livelihood when you have to now fire them, or when you have to now remove them from a position or transfer them out to somewhere else that they worked hard to get to. Now, once I transfer you out, or once I do get rid of you, that now that's permanent in from a standpoint of being under my employment. So now the record is stating that's why you got transferred, or that's why you got removed. So anytime someone calls HR for a recommendation, HR is not me.
Right.
They don't know all the details. All they're going to do is open up the file and say, the reason why the person got transferred or why that person got, dismissed was X, Y, Z. And what does that mean for them? They're not going to get reemployed anywhere else because nobody's going to employ them.
Right.
It also means if they file for unemployment, they're not going to get the unemployment benefit.
All right. Which isn't, in the whole grand scheme of things, you basically convicted this person in the workforce arena without any type of trial. And because that's what you protecting the company, protecting the organization. And it's
and protecting self.
Yeah.
But I just, but like I say, without repeating myself, I just think we've taken it too far.
Yeah, we have taken it too far, and we've taken it too far. And I will say again, the people suffering from it is the ones that really needed it.
Oh, yeah.
Like when you have a whole gymnastics team get sexually assaulted, the entire team, that's saying a lot. And we're talking about over years.
Sure.
The situation with the Boy Scouts. I know I was talking with my wife and she was like, I'll never send Cameron to the Boy Scouts, to be part of the Boy Scouts. Or if he went to camp, I'm going to make sure I'm one of the people, or you will be going to the camp. And I've been, it's football camps. I went to plenty of camps over the summer. Nothing like that even remotely even came close to happening. Sure. But I understand where she's coming from. Like, with the situation with the Boy Scouts. But now you then took that situation, what's happening with the Boy Scouts, and then spread it across like peanut butter on a piece of bread all the way across everything and said, well, he ain't going to no camps.
Right. And even Boy Scouts. It's not like that every scout leader.
Right.
is a pedophile.
Right.
Because that's not true.
Right.
You know, but because of those incidents, it now puts a bad light on all of them. That's what I'm, that's something that, to me, it's kind of going a little bit over the edge. I hate that it's going to hurt. I fear it's going to hurt Biden. That bothers me. And I throw something else at, because, most of our listeners are grown folk. So I'll throw one more thing out there. Think about Mike Tyson. Think about Mike Tyson. Now, Mike Tyson is accused of rape of that woman, right?
Right.
But what happened? And I'm throwing this out as a question. If you were to tell the story, what about that story would lead you to think it was rape?
Yeah. I got my own thoughts on, and that one I'm not going to say into Mike, but we all put it like this.
Well, say it in a way that don't hurt church folk feeling.
Right. The story. I think it was like 2:00 in the morning. Yes. He invited her to the room at 2:00 in the morning, and most grown folks know the only thing open after midnight.
It is what it is.
It is what it right. It is what it is. So now, whether or not she got in there and had a change of heart, because what you said was critical. What we do not know now, what we know now about Mike Tyson and how wild he was back then, there's no telling when she walked through the door what was going on in that room. Right? So I don't know. Like, I have shifted a little bit on my feelings about it, because now I know from admission from Mike Tyson how wild he was back in those days. But the key point is, we don't know, but he went to jail for 4 years, quite possibly robbed
of the best fighting
years that we, it's just, how can I put this? I wish I tell people, don't put yourself in a situation where the truth sounds like a lie. So what I'm saying,
which truth?
The truth.
I mean, with them two, which truth? Mike's truth or her truth?
Mike's truth, because Mike's truth, he said, I invited her up to the room. Right. And did she leave right after? That part I can't remember.
Okay, here's the thing. I agree with your premise, but that's why I say it's gone too far based on what you just said. Because Mike's truth, right, made sense. Her truth did too, but his made sense. So if you put it in today's thing, right, what if your son goes out on prom date?
Right.
On prom night, oftentimes,
yeah, right.
Kids do what kids do.
Right.
What should your son do? Have a video recording to validate, that she did say it's okay for me to kiss you. She did say it's okay for me. What should he do? If you invite a woman to your hotel room at after midnight, you're not inviting her to dinner. That's number one.
Right.
There's not dinner involved. Mike says that because it was uncomfortable for her, that's when the issue of, rape came up. But nothing came up out of her mouth while they were there. And so she gets back into the limousine. Limousine takes her back, and he doesn't go with her. So it's like, I'm have what I want from you. That's it. I've listened to Mike interview about maybe a year or so ago and talking about his life in general. He still says that as wild as he was, he says, I never did it the way she said. It was always consensual. He said, I've never disrespected a woman like that.
Right.
He said, because I never had to.
Right.
He says, actually, I'm shy. He says, now I fight like I'm wild, but that's the me
right.
that I use for this persona.
Right.
And then he talks about, of course, his wife, Robin Givens, and some things that happened with them too. And I believe Mike over Robin Givens as well, because of what she said just doesn't register to me. If Mike punched you, you ain't gonna just be sitting beside him with your face looking like, you just ripped all the magazine cover.
Right.
That's a whole nother ball game. I guess with him, when I look at Mike's situation, I'm not saying Mike did not force himself on her. Who knows?
Right.
It just would seem to me that there is some reasonable doubt.
Yeah.
There's some reasonable doubt. And so just like Mike has an obligation, as you said, to don't put yourself in a situation, doesn't it work both ways?
Yes, it does.
Shouldn't a reasonable woman recognize that if a man invites you to his hotel room, which is really a bedroom, that there's a reason why? I mean, couldn't y'all have met in the lobby area, which they did originally? It's not like they started out in the bedroom.
Right.
But couldn't you have stayed in the lobby area and talked to him and, whatever, and then just said, well, okay, thank you, and gone? So to me, that truth works both ways. And I'll give you a quick example. I know our time is running out or ran out. So let me give you a quick example of what I'm talking about. And this is a true story. There's a minister that did marriage counseling for a couple. The way he did his counseling, generally speaking, was he would counsel each party separate and then counsel them together. Now, he goes through all his counseling. He performed the marriage ceremony. They come back from the honeymoon and all, and about 2 months later, he gets arrested for rape.
What?
Yes. The bride says when they did the individual counseling, he raped her. He says, no, I didn't. She says, yes, he did. Now, whether or not he did, who knows?
Right.
But his thing was this. I had a secretary sitting outside. This woman never yelled out, this man is raping me, to my secretary. I counsel her, and then I counsel her husband separate. She never told her husband that I raped her.
Right.
I counseled them together. She kept coming to my counseling sessions.
Right.
I performed the wedding ceremony.
Right.
Now, I'm not saying he didn't rape her. All I'm saying is I can't imagine it from where I sit.
Right.
If someone did that to me staying and going through all that with them. So, he may have, he may not. All I can say is that sometimes if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, swims and flies, it is a duck.
Right.
And so sometimes if it looks like everything was consensual, why do we just jump on the bandwagon and say, no, it was not?
So what happened with the counselor?
The preacher, he was convicted of rape.
Wow.
Yes, he was convicted of rape.
That's a shame. But, that goes, in the field of mental health, when you go see a counselor, a lot of them have cameras now that film the entire session because of stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I tell all of our ministers that are male, do not go to a female's house by yourself. Don't even go to the hospital in that room by yourself and close that door.
Right.
Don't do it. Because not saying they will do anything and say anything, but like you said earlier, you don't want to put yourself in a position where somebody can.
Yep. Wow. Oh, you got anything else before we close out?
Well, just want to remind people that, we're in stage 1 of moving beyond COVID-19. So listen, Sunday, we're going to be back in service again. So just encourage people, we won't be able to accommodate everybody, but if you're tired of sitting in the house and you want to get some corporate worship on, come on out.
All right. Thank y'all so much for joining us. This is your host, CB Baker. Till next time.